The buzz meter this Sunday, a feel-good story quickly turns bad. President Obama under fire for trading 5 Taliban commanders for an American soldier, as the media keep digging out new details about his decision, his explanation, his failure to consult Congress, and at the heart of it, the conduct of Bo Bergdahl.
Tonight, we are hearing stunning new accusations from the soldiers who served with Bo Bergdahl and those who risked their lives to save him.
All the early joy and celebration over Bergdahl's release has indeed been clouded over several growing controversies.
He deserted not only the Army, but he also left myself and my platoon and my company to clean up his mess.
Raise your hand if you think he deserted. Wow. Raise your hand if you have some question about whether he deserted. Wow.
Has the media coverage been fair or politically driven? And why are some liberal commentators saying Bergdahl has been swift-boated? Brett Baer on his son's struggle for life and how he was torn between his television work and a baby with a defective heart. Plus, a court says people have the legal right to force Google to delete unfair or negative information about them from online searches. Sounds tempting, but doesn't that trample free speech? I'm Howard Kurtz, and this is Media Buzz. It was remarkable how quickly the media narrative on Bo Bergdahl turned to harsh criticism of the president and the soldier for just about every aspect of the decision to swap 5 Taliban prisoners being held at Gitmo.
Susan Rice saying to the world that Sergeant Bergdahl served his country with honor? Are you kidding me? And that's on top of the Benghazi stuff?
The fact is, an American soldier's coming home. They're going to play it to the tilt as something wrong with President Obama. It's his fault. High crimes and misdemeanor.
Why are we doing anything to get this guy back? He's ashamed to be an American. He calls America disgusting.
This is an orchestrated smear campaign. The implication is that President Obama should have left a U.S. soldier to die. But if he had done that, the same Republicans would be attacking him for doing that. So the whole thing is completely outrageous.
The administration's version began to unravel as news organizations focused on an email from Bergdahl to his parents saying he was ashamed to be an American, and began interviewing soldiers who said Bergdahl deserted their military unit and put their lives at risk.
What was your immediate thought when you learned and the fellow members of your squad and platoon learned that he was gone?
I immediately knew. I said he walked away. He walked away.
Everybody that I talked to believed he deserted. Is there any dispute about that?
No, he deserted his post willfully and purposefully.
He just vanished, and the next morning when they were trying to do a roll call, they couldn't find him and realized this guy sneaked out.
The White House pushback against the media was soon echoed by such pundits as MSNBC's Ari Melber.
A former POW who's under treatment now at a military hospital is being swift-boated by the reflexive anti-Obama machine.
Brian Williams asked the president about the decision, but he got the same talking points.
What was the reason for not informing the 8 members of Congress who would customarily be informed by this?
Brian, I have to tell you the same thing that I've been saying for the last several days.
The president repeating his point that the U.S. should leave no soldier behind on the battlefield. Joining us now to examine the coverage, Lauren Ashburn, Fox News contributor, host of Social Buzz on the Fox website, and recovering from a tennis injury. Jim Pinkerton, a Fox News contributor who also writes for The American Conservative, and Bill Press, host of the Bill Press radio show. Lauren Ashburn, what's the most important thing the media did to change the administration's narrative about the Bo Bergdahl release?
Absolutely no question. It's the interviews that we saw just a moment ago by these soldiers who served side by side with Bo Bergdahl, saying that he was a deserter. You could see it in their demeanor, saying, how could this man walk away from us, put our lives at risk by knowing that we would have to go searching for him?
Jim Pinkerton, as you know, Susan Rice going out on the Sunday talk shows more than a week ago talking about Bergdahl serving with honor and distinction got a lot of attention. And then on Friday, CNN reporter Jim Acosta was able to get a brief interview with her, asked about that. She had a chance to back off. Here's what happened.
he is, as all Americans, innocent until proven guilty. He's now being tried in the court of public opinion after having gone through an enormously traumatic 5 years of captivity.
Why such a focus on this phrase, honor and distinction?
Well, because she seems to like it. And I think it speaks to the tin ear of the contemporary Democratic Party for patriotic issues. They just don't have a sense of the military culture. This is not the FDR Democratic Party that won its wars and executed deserters.
So you don't think the media are making too much of it?
I don't. I think Lauren's right. The soldiers, his colleagues, every one of them, I mean, it's not even close. Now, the New York Times is doing its best to smear the unit by running articles say they're sloppy and raggedy and so on. And the New York Times editorial page has finally found an American soldier they like in Bergdahl. But listen, but the average soldier, the ones talking, the ones being interviewed, are unanimous on this.
I'll come back to the smear question in just a moment. But Bill Press, after the email from Bergdahl to his parents, widely reported ashamed to be an American, James Rosen of Fox News got hold of a contractor's intelligence reports about his captivity. We learned a whole lot of things, such as that he had tried to escape a couple times and been held in a cage, but also, according to this report, that he had played soccer with his captors and declared himself a warrior for Islam. Should that have gotten more coverage? Do you have any question about that story?
Well, first of all, I think Jim Rosen is a damn good reporter, and he's not a criminal co-conspirator, as he was first called. I just want to put that out there. But I read that story as well. It's a questionable source. You've got to say the guy who runs the source, who put it out there, was once indicted for lying to Congress. So you got to raise questions about that.
Although let me just interrupt. The part about Bergdahl being kept in a cage, now we know for weeks or months, was confirmed by American military sources today in the Times.
Right. And the Pentagon did its own investigation of his captivity. They didn't come out with what's in the report, that after he tried to escape and was punished, that then he became more friendly with them. They treated him well. He was able to get out, play soccer, carry a gun, maybe even we don't know that that's true. If it is true, even, we don't know what it says. I mean, is it Stockholm Syndrome?
Is it being nice to his captors to try to stay alive?
Get more food and stay alive.
I think those are
I'm not going to judge what he said under captivity, because I don't know what I would do.
Pulling back the camera a bit, is there something of a media rush to judgment here? Is Bo Bergdahl being court-martialed by the press?
Absolutely. I think it's a rush to judgment in some instances. Early on, there were questions raised about 6 to 8 soldiers who died, who may have died looking for Bergdahl. And the New York Times itself actually said that is very murky. So there was that. There was also early on, 2010, Rolling Stone and Michael Hastings did this report here talking about all of the information that we knew about how he possibly was a deserter, yet at the time that didn't make any sense. And once all of this started to come forward, everybody started referencing the article.
And just Hastings also reported, the late Michael Hastings, that there were disciplinary problems with that unit, which is now something that's been picked up in the last couple of days by not just the New York Times but others. Is that unfair to point out?
Well, Hastings said the discipline problems that had plagued Bo's unit back home only got worse when immersed in the fog of war. And as Jim brought up, the headline today in the New York Times is Bergdahl was in unit known for its troubles.
Why is that a smear?
I don't think it. I mean, it's smear on who? I'm sorry.
You said earlier the New York Times was smearing the unit.
Here they are smearing the unit. The Bergdahl unit was known for its troubles. That's a smear. That is an attack. That is an attack. Why are they focusing on this?
Because there were problems, according to Hastings
the New York Times
and the New York Times.
Pulls its journalistic resources together to say it really wasn't that bad that Bergdahl deserted. Who could blame him? I mean, and again, it's in the context of the Times editorial where they say, "Oh, Bergdahl, misunderstood."
Excuse me. This is on the front page. They're reporting the news. The news is the Pentagon knew there were problems with this unit. Obviously, security for that unit wasn't that tough if Bergdahl was able to walk off at least twice and come back, and his buddy soldiers, at least some of them, told the Pentagon, they thought this was a good move.
Let me broaden this with a question to you, Jim.
It wasn't a smear.
We saw earlier MSNBC's Ari Melber, and the White House aides have started to put this out quietly. This is swift boating. Ari Melber worked for John Kerry in the 2004 campaign, so he knows about swift boating, or at least he has it on his mind. But Is that a fair charge when I would argue that lots of news organizations that would not be described as conservative organizations, New York Times, CNN among them, have been going out and finding out information from the soldiers you mentioned and other sources about Bergdahl's conduct?
Jake Tapper of CNN said that better men gave their lives in looking for Bergdahl. That's Jake Tapper, who wrote a book about Afghanistan, which, by the way, if you read Tapper's book, every unit in Afghanistan, look, it's a crazy war, and they're alone by themselves in little fire bases. Of course they can't keep track of everybody, and if that person chooses voluntarily to desert. To my knowledge, there's only been one deserter coming out of Afghanistan. That's Bergdahl. Everybody else manages to deal with the same situations and stay loyal.
I just want to make the point. First of all, we can't all agree, right? I believe overall, with some exceptions, the media's response to the story has been shameful because they took a narrative. You just used the word deserter. The word you hear most often to describe Sergeant Bergdahl is he was a deserter. We do not know that. We haven't heard his story. We know he walked off twice and he came back to his post. A deserter doesn't do that. Why did he go off? We don't know. There are a lot of different reasons. To call him a deserter in the media, I think, is just going way over the line.
Here's the problem, is that we can't talk to him. We don't know what he was thinking. There is no way we can know his motive. But if you look into the eyes of those soldiers who said he deserted and they were there, you need to report that. And then when you finally hear Bergdahl's side of it, then the decision can be made.
Okay, but first of all, I want to make it clear that, and not everybody at MSNBC bought into this swift boating spin. Chris Matthews, for example, said everything that he knows has been reported has been true. Turn for a second to the Taliban video that everybody replayed endlessly, propaganda video of the handover, I should say, of Bergdahl. Why did that get so much attention, and does it go to your point about we haven't heard from him or even seen him?
Are you kidding? Why did it get so much attention? I mean, here's the central figure of this entire story, and we only have one picture of him in a military uniform, and now we get to look into his blinking eyes and imagine what happened to him or try to discern what the relationship was with his captors. You see him in a Pashtun smock. I mean, you think, okay, maybe he's sympathetic to them, maybe he's not. Is he, cognizant of what's happening? Has he been tortured? I mean, you have to see that video to understand the story.
But let's also talk about why we haven't heard from him. It's been a week, okay? I think the problem they have is you keep seeing reports that he's been converted, James Rosen's converted to Islam, he's declared jihad. I think they're terrified of letting him even talk to his own family to do an interview because they're afraid he's going to declare Allah Akbar on TV.
I am not going to second guess the doctors at Langstolt in Germany who are caring for this guy. Give them a freaking chance to do what he needs to do to get back. Sorry, Jim, let me just finish. Back to his family. I also think it's important to point out there's at least one soldier, former soldier in his unit, that told the Pentagon, described him as a good soldier. So we have to, there are other voices out there. We don't know the story. That's all
One thing I think we're going to agree on is that there are still unanswered questions because we have not heard, except just bits and pieces from leaks from Bo Bergdahl himself, but also that there's been bipartisan criticism on the Hill, including from many Democrats, about the administration's handling, about the failure to notify Congress. I think that has given this whole story more of a bipartisan flavor, so it's not just a one-sided attack from the right. Remember to send me a tweet about this. This is going to be a hot topic, obviously, on Twitter, at Howard Kurtz. We're going to read some of your messages later in the program. When we come back, should the media's criticism of Bo Bergdahl also extend to his dad? And later, an advanced look at Hillary Clinton sitting down with Diane Sawyer, and the subject turns to Karl Rove.